Okay, first off I'm going to apologise for the lecture, which is 2 hours long, because I'm going to push your endurance, your lecture watching endurance. About an hour way through, there'll be only about a minute pause, so we can change the camera film. And so please keep seated as I continue. The reason why, this is relatively a new lecture, and it's kind of two-part, really. The investigations that I undertook in these locations around the world, for me was about trying to find out the real truth, because there's a lot of stuff you see on television. Ancient Aliens, for example, TV show for those people who watch it. I always wondered how much truth there is really to these things. Is there really, is it really fantastic? Is it really special? Or is it like we get with a lot of television shows, the icing on the has been added onto it. There's lots of things which might be a bit misleading. And I was quite surprised, really, because what I actually found was more than what we're actually told on television. Actually the opposite, which was very interesting. But one of the most significant places to visit is Peru. And if you do visit Peru, then you really do have a task at hand if you're interested in ancient mysteries, because I don't think there is another country on this planet that holds so many mysteries than Peru does. Though there are some fantastic locations around the world, such as Egypt and things like that, but Peru for myself was, there's just so many hidden things still to learn. And I went there primarily for an investigation into these so-called Nazca mummies. Have we heard about these so-called Nazca mummies? Yeah, it went everywhere. And participating in that investigation on official capacity, we were working for the Inca Institute, and to try and figure out the authenticity of these bodies. But whilst we were there, we also did a number of investigations, and some of this focused on ancient sites and the truth about as to how they were created and what actual knowledge is known about them. We have to start off about history and what history tells us. Okay, so the first thing that always seems to come into question is about how we derived. We're told through different history books, science information, that the Darwinian theory is that we originated from the apes, and in this fashion. No, nothing more, nothing less, no missing links. We are simply just evolved apes. But as time's gone on, that's been more and more questionable. And areas between these have grown, indicating other forms of humans that lived around about the same time. We're told 200,000 years ago, we were kind of just living in caves. We didn't have much intelligence. We were hunters and gatherers, and that was about it. And that's absolute rubbish, I'll tell you now. Absolute rubbish. One of the things you'll learn through this is never to underestimate early man, because their techniques and capabilities far exceed the historical information that we're told. 10,000 years ago, we were just kind of farmers. That was it. Nothing special. And we know that's absolute hogwash as well. But yet, this is mainstream information and historical details which are still pushed out to society. Our children, our kids in school still learn the same old story about history, which is not complete. And there are many untruths. Today's society, modern day, we look at it and say, okay, we grant you what we actually are capable of. However, it's surprising to find out what capabilities early man had compared to our modern day constructions. We're focusing on a number of places in this lecture, Peru being probably one of the main locations. Is any actually, for show of hands, anybody that's actually been to Peru? Just the one, okay. So, and did you go on a tour, Michael?
I did, yeah.
You did? Okay. This is the thing with many places like Peru. If people that visit Peru, they tend to go on the tours. The best thing to do when visiting Peru is not to do the tours, is to basically do your own. because you are only taken around certain areas which is mainstream known. What we see on television, what we read in the books. What you don't get told, or don't get told, is those things when you start taking your own path away from these tours. And that's exactly what we did when we were in Peru. There's also Bolivia. Bolivia there's a huge amount of anomalies in Bolivia, just as much as there is in Peru. And of course, we can't leave out Egypt, can we? But I'm not going to focus on pyramids, because we've all been there, we've all seen this sort of stuff, pyramids. There's hundreds of anomalies, and even recent ones, which are suggesting through specialised surveys carried out that they've found yet another location or possible room in the Great Pyramid. That was only, I think, released over the last couple of months, if anybody heard about that. So they're still finding things, but I'm not going to focus on the pyramids because we've been there and done it. But I am going to talk to you about some of the things just literally scattered around the outside on the floor. Again, when you go, in fact, has anybody been to Egypt? Extra hands, fantastic, and Richard. People tend to do the normal thing, they go to Egypt, they go on the tour, they go into the pyramid, they do the routine thing. If you spend a day or two just doing your own thing, looking around outside, what's around on the floor, it's literally in plain sight. But you know what? I was sat there looking at these images of these people walking past things that are just there on the floor, and they're absolutely no idea they exist, and they're right there because they're focused on the pyramids and not the surrounding location. Sacsayhuaman, very interesting location. How you'd probably say that, most people just kind of nickname it Sexy Woman, because that's kind of how it sounds. When I visited this location, I was surprised to find that we wanted to do a little bit of filming on a small little camera. I had to have government permission. You have to go, and now you have to go and get permission from the government to say I can go in there and take video footage. I thought, hell, everybody else is going there with cameras and phones. Everyone's got cameras on their mobile phones nearly now, haven't they? So I thought, heck, I'm not going to wait around and mess about waiting for government to allow us to go and do this. But visiting this location was also an eye-opener, because we've seen and heard about this on television. It is a phenomenal site. It's what they refer to is an Inca fortress. And most of these constructions around the world, including the pyramids, we're told that the construction and the way they were built were manufactured by using these tools. Now, the first thing that you realise when you start looking at ancient sites, the first thing you start to learn is about the stones, the rock. And the rock that has been used in some of these locations are tremendously strong rocks. So difficult to cut. To the point where there is actually a level that you can actually look now, and you can see a level of the hardest rock to the softest rock for use. Soft rocks like limestone, sandstone, things like that. But when you start dealing with granite and rose quartz granite and things of that nature, you start getting into level 7s, 8s and 9s. These are the hardest rocks on the planet. However, the downside to these tools is they are made of bronze and copper. Some of them are just pounding stones. And they said this is what they made them with, this is how they cut the stones with. The problem of that is that these copper tools and brass tools, some of them are level 3 and a level 4 in strength. So it's like me saying, giving you a copper tool and saying, okay, go and cut me a slice out of that granite rock, which is level 9. The tool just can't do the job. The tool is not strong enough to do the job. In fact, the rock is harder than the tool. But this is what the general history books tell us, general archaeology tells us, that these are the tools that are manufactured, and it's absolute rubbish. These tools could not have done the job. So you have to question, where are the tools? Because the evidence is in plain sight. A number of other things that we find out when we're doing research is about the Inca civilization. Now, those that have been to Peru, I know Michael has, the Peru is the area concentrated is Cusco, and that's where this main city is. And this gathering of people that live there didn't derive there, they moved to that location. They moved from Lake Titicaca, and the reason why they moved is because thousands of years ago there was such a severe drought that they had no choice but to move, because it was difficult to grow plants, it was difficult to have herds of animals, and they actually literally had to move to a greener valley, which is the valley of Cusco, where they literally set up shop, in a sense of speaking. But when they got there, when they got to Cusco, the Incas realised very quickly that someone had been there prior to them. It's as simple as that. Someone was there prior to the Incas. When we look at Inca buildings, we look at the places where they derived from. The island of the sun, and we can see these Inca stone buildings. A lot of them are just not even precision cut stones, it's like when you take a walk in Yorkshire and you see one of those, you know, those nice Yorkshire walls. There's no precision cutting really with them, they're just placed, aren't they? The rocks are strategically placed together to build a wall. And that's exactly the same thing that we find here. And yet this is listed as Inca built. Inca stone buildings, you can see, yeah, they look great, they look fantastic, and it's great work. But it isn't the work that we're used to seeing on TV shows like Ancient Aliens and things. No, it isn't. We're seeing a lot of different things throughout the world that represent a different type of stonework than this. In some cases, Inca stone buildings even consisted with mud as well. It was stone and mud put together. And these are referred to as adobe mud buildings. And it's just literally dried out mud, which they pack tight, leave it to dry in the sun so it goes hard and used. Again, foundations of just normal rocks placed, and of course these adobe bricks. Again, something significantly different than what we're seeing elsewhere in Peru. Now we start to look at this. This is again supposed to be Inca. Exactly the same. This is Inca. From around about the same, well, they say not too much difference in time, maybe within 800 to 1,000 years difference between this location. I don't believe that's true whatsoever. It would seem that when you travel around Peru, there's evidence of Peruvian structures being built by the Inca, and somebody else who's built, maybe the Pre-Incas, what I refer to as the Pre-Incas. We look at the gateway of the sun, cut from a single piece of rock. Unfortunately, it has this crack down the side here now, but it was cut from a single piece of rock. And this isn't just by accident, you know, the strategic, the mathematics, the calculations involved in that, cutting of that stone, the markings on this stone, the precision of its alignment is absolutely tremendous. It's off the scale. So the work involved in just this single piece of stone is incredible. Is it the same thing that we're seeing with these adobe brick buildings of the Inca? We look at stones like this, which are so flat that if you run your finger across the edge of that, you could cut yourself. It's that sharp. It's that precise. Let alone, this stone has precision drill marks in it, inside a groove, inside a precision cut groove in the stone. This, again, as you can see, absolutely spot on. The divide between the, I can only assume, are drill marks, or drill holes. Somehow, the pre-Incas had a method of drilling holes into stone. But it must have been pretty easy. It must have been pretty easy from what we gather. From when we look at all these structures from all around the world, you know, why would people go to such lengths and say, okay, let's cut a stone which is, I don't know, 100 tons, for an example. Let's cut a stone 100 tons, why not? Why don't we just cut 1,000 of them? Because we still have the same mass being moved, but it makes the job easier, like it would do today. This is why we have houses built of small bricks, because they're easy to manage. You know, we don't have houses built up of, say, 4 huge stones, because it's just not feasible. Probably the most intricate of all designs of cut rock is the Pre-Inca H blocks. We've probably seen these before, and I have to say, they are quite incredible. How these precisely fit together like a Meccano set. And it's so clever that they slide in on top of each other, because you cannot move. There's absolutely no way one block will move, because it's permanently tied into the block below and above, so that there's no movement. The guys that were building these, the pre-Incas, whoever these were, had a lot of knowledge in regarding earthquakes, because these buildings are earthquake proof. The same as the pyramids are earthquake proof, to most degree. But there would have been some form of cataclysm at some stage, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Now, these skulls are very interesting. This is in the Ica Museum in Peru. And though that they are, hey, you know, they're known, you can go in there, you can see them. Believe it or not, most people don't visit the Ica Museum to see these in their glory. And they've been passed off as Inca skulls, and also passed off as having boarding carried out, causing the elongation of the skull, or the wrappings from childhood, to purposely shape the skull in this manner. Well, that's all very well. If we take a child today, and we board this child, or we wrap its head to cause elongation, and this is a process that takes years. Apart from asking the question, why should people do that, I would only suggest that they were, or they wanted to look like their gods, for example, which is very befitting with the Egyptians, because the Egyptians did exactly the same thing. But apart from that, when you elongate the skull in this manner through boarding or, you know, embalming the head, what you don't get is extra brain mass. The size of the brain is the size of the brain. You know, the brain will grow in a certain fashion depending on the skull shape. You know, we all have different sizes, skulls and shapes, but the brain mass is equivalent to that skull. What we don't see in these is the typical brain mass of a human being. The brain size in these range from 20 to 28% more than they would do in a human being of today's nature, should we say. These guys had larger brains, it's as simple as that. Or they had a massive void in the skull. A massive void, and that's very, very unlikely to have just a void. You know, the brain is a standard sized brain and there's just this emptiness. It just doesn't seem feasible. The brain mass on these guys are larger. But when you actually do some research about the Incas, you'll find that all these skulls, I mean, look at the size of these. Yeah? They say, oh yeah, don't worry, these are just Inca guys, you know. The Inca guys look like this. Well, you know, there's a lot of people that live in Peru, and they'll talk about their ancestors, and they'll point out a lot of things that these guys are nothing to do with their ancestors. And there's hundreds of these, by the way, hundreds of these. According to information and historical books, by the way, here's the contradiction, guys. This is what the Inca looked like. And according to the people that live in Cusco, they say, yeah, our relatives look like this. This is how our kin looked. They haven't changed from thousands and thousands of millennia. And again, when you look at these skulls, they're not represented the same. And yet we've got two historical aspects here conflicting. This one saying that they're actually Inca, and this one saying that, oh yeah, these are the images of Inca and what they look like. They haven't got these three elongated skulls. Moving from Lake Titicaca, as I mentioned earlier, they were forced to move to a greener valley, which is Cusco. This is just outside Cusco. This is pretty much kind of what it would have looked like. Very green, beautiful. And they moved from there, from the Lake Titicaca to this location. And of course, as they pursued around these corners, they came across what I believe is pre-Inca construction. But they did also come across some walls, because the Inca talk about coming across constructions by another tribe, very similar to the Inca, which are known as the Wari. And the Wari construction is, again, very primitive really, isn't it? To the point where it's nothing special, it looks like just like a wall that you might see in Yorkshire or Lancashire. And very similar to the adobe type stuff the Incas were building in their homelands. But when you come across things like this is Inca on top of early construction. What I'm suggesting is that this precision building with huge blocks and cuts to shape is pre-Inca built. And then the Inca came along and built this on top of it. Clearly we're looking at two completely different types of building techniques. They probably did come across pre-Inca built constructions and built on top of them. This here, the Corichancha, is at the centre of Cusco, and it's an amazing location for more than one reason. This particular wall, by the way, is just amazing, pre-Inca built. Prior to the building behind, this is all new compared to this. This is an original site. And there is no more to use cement or anything of sort. They are simply just placed rocks together, precisionally cut. Also, they were quite clever by putting keystones in these things. These were usually metal that was melted and placed in these to lock the stones together, because they didn't want movement. Now, if you look at our houses that we live in 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years' time, they'll probably just be rubble, because there is micro movements in all houses, always. You know, the land's always moving slowly at some point. These guys knew how to maintain construction, should we say, without any shifting in blocks. Very similar, which has been used all around the world. In fact, these are all from around the world, be it Vietnamese, Egyptian, Indian, Aztec, Peruvian. You know, all these areas, these locations, the guys have kind of got all the same idea. Where did that idea come from? It would seem around about the same time, the eras, around the whole globe, an idea went around, faster than lightning, to say, hey guys, let's start building like this, using great massive stones, and not only that, let's cut keystones into them to make sure that they don't move. And yet this is, according to history, this is at a time when we thought the planet wasn't even round, and that people weren't travelling the vast distances of the Pacific Ocean. Someone must have done. Someone must have been carrying this idea around. Do you think it's purely by chance? You know, that 37 countries on this planet have pyramids. There are probably more that we haven't discovered yet. But 37 countries have them. Round about the same time, round about the same idea. Numerous different fashions, but nevertheless, using very similar technology to have built them. The precision of cutting holes. Now this hole's around about golf ball size. And you have to question, how did he cut these stones? How did he drill these out? This is cored out, by the way. And this is granite, and it's cored out. It's a levelate stone. It's cored out by something which turned, because you can see those turn marks in the core itself as you look through the hole. Even core samples which we've located show the same markings. For instance, you can just see that something bored, cored its way through this immense hard rock to the point where it was cutting through 1/8 of a millimetre per resolution. What was that? What was it that was turning and slowly cutting away? Remember, they only had copper tools and chisels and things. Not even anything has ever been found to show of a boring device, a cutting device, a circular drill bit or anything. Nothing. There's no evidence of any of these pieces of the puzzle. we're left with all these remarkable things all around the world, but where is all the tools? Where's the machinery? In the centre of the current tracker, we have this particular object, and we don't really know what it is. It's some type of stone casket. It's basically a single piece of rock, by the way. And I'll tell you what it reminds me of. It reminds me of the sarcophagus in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid. It is cut from a single, I would say it's probably around about this size for the table. It's cut from a single piece of rock. Someone at some stage would have just dropped a rock there and said, okay, what we're going to do is, we're going to bore out perfectly all the stone that's in the middle of this. With precision. Because the lines inside this are precision corners. And it's cut from a single piece of rock. And apparently used boulding rocks, pounding rocks, small pounding rocks, pebble-sized, and copper chisels to do this. It's impossible. It can't be done. There's no way it can be done. It doesn't matter how much they'll scream it from the rooftops. Anybody who's worked in stonemasonry and even with metal tools will tell you it's impossible, it cannot be done. Interestingly enough, they planted these flowers and stuff, and you see these pots, well, these flowers around now, because they don't want people to go over here. You're not allowed up to this now and look in and take photographs, because they don't want that information out. They don't want people to start looking at the precision corners made in this, whatever this be. So they kind of deter people from going in there now by putting these plants around. But if we look at the current tracker here, number 8, and we look at all the ancient sites, because these aren't just scattered around either. bit like England, really, regarding layers and certain constructions, and other places around the world. The pre-Incas also were clued up in the same manner. If you look at most, if not all, the ancient sites, standing sites in Peru, from Sacsayhuaman, which is up here, to the Coychancha, around at the bottom, which is number 8, all the other sites line up in a perfect line. In a perfect line. They all line up. This isn't purely by chance. They can't purely by chance just all line up. They were constructed, the Pre-Incas constructed these things so that they were in a direct line of sight with the next build, and so on and so forth. Apart from that, what people don't tell you, and what you don't see on television or in the TV shows, or the books, is that there is caverns, cave system underneath Cusco, travelling all the way underneath these ancient sites. Every single ancient site links up to the next ancient site underground, and it's cut stone. This isn't a natural cave system, no waterway. It's cut stone. There is caverns underneath which have been dug out and cut out from bedrock, which travel the distance across Cusco underneath these ancient sites, linking them up. So just as we did in the early days in England, linking all Catholic churches up during the Reformation so that our monks and priests could scatter when the soldiers came round. A lot of these things that we found is that churches were linked up to abbeys and all sorts. Well, we're finding the same thing in Peru, but the differences in time is massive. And if this here, number 8, which is the Coychancha, has also a huge amount of geomagnetic energy coming out from it. It is referred to as the navel of Peru. And we thought, why is it referred to as the navel of Peru? And probably because it's off the scale in geomagnetics. Right on the, and I'll tell you where it is. There it is. That is the source where they purposely placed this. This was purposely placed on the centre spot of a huge geomagnetic anomaly that reaches out for miles. And this is the centre of it. And of course, the further sites are coming up in this direction, as we can see. Right on that point. That's not coincidence. That's knowledge that shouldn't have been known. We look through Cusco. As we walk through Cusco, we start to see these buildings built on top of old building type materials. These are pre-Inca, old pre-Inca constructions. And what's been built on top of them are more modern Inca type buildings. You can see Inca wall here and pre-Inca here. I mean, they didn't even bother going to them. You know, when we build, we put bricks to the corners. These guys didn't. These guys curved around using a singular stone. You know, just to fashion one stone of this size with perfect curvature and fitting could have taken what for you for at least 15, 16 to 20 years to just do one stone. Is it feasible? I would only suggest that it must have been easy for them to do so. It must have been hard, and I'll show you as we go through some slides that proves that it must have been very easy for them. And just under this stone down here, which was being excavated, this wall collapsed some time back, and they were doing some excavating. And what did they pull up from the ground? These guys, more elongated skulls. And what happens to these skulls? They get rushed off to different places, usually not to be seen again. There's a few that are on show in the Inca Museum. However, when you talk to the guys there, they will indicate that these went through analysis 15 years ago or something like that. They conducted a thorough analysis on these skulls. But if you ask for the results, there aren't any. They don't share any. They haven't got them. You know, so it's like pointless. Where is that information? Where's that critical information from the analysis on these skulls? Oh, we don't know. We haven't got it. To me, that's not a satisfactory explanation. You're putting these on display. This wall here is the most finest built wall in the world. Literally, in the world. It's perfectly straight to, I think it's something silly like 0.8 of an inch. It's ridiculous, you know. How they constructed this is just amazing. Amazing feat. And what we can see here is, of course, Incas had a go. But they don't kind of pull off the same, do they? You know, if they were all doing the same job and all around about the same time, surely they'd just carry on building as they would have done. No, we are seeing two different types of construction methods here. This bit makes me laugh because when the Spanish were there, and pretty much the conquistadors took over the place and even ruled that it was okay to actually pillage graves, believe it or not, which is still happening. Part of this wall fell down, and the Spanish gave it a go. The Spaniards said, "Okay, we'll have a go. We'll put it up." And then this is their effort to try and match this. Their effort, it's actually got mortar in between. Can you see that? It's got mortar in between all of these stones here because there's no way that it'd stay there in place as it has done without being cemented in. But this does not have any cement. It's just literally are stones balanced upon each other, strategically tied in. And when you start to look at these stones, why don't they just use straight stones? It's like me coming to you going, "Okay guys, we're going to build a wall today and we are going to build it the most difficult way we can. Every single piece of stone is going to have at least 6, 7, 8 shapes to it. And we're going to strategically tie them all together. So when you make a stone, your stone's got to fit with that stone, and your stone's got to fit with that one, and so on and so forth." Why? Why make it so damn difficult? Well, that's the thing. It's like the challenge is there. It's like, "Hey guys, this is something we've left behind, and this is showing you and representing how good we were, and how clever we were, and how easy it may have been to cut these stones." And not only cut them, but they fashioned them in such a way that they've worn them down so that every stone looks like a piece of art. It's all got this nice curvy round, and I tell you, when you touch them, it's like touching silk. You know, they're smooth, there's no divots. The only things that they purposely left are these nodules. And you think, why did you leave these nodules? Why have them not? What are those nodules? And it's not the only place we find these nodules, I'll show you.
It always reminds me, you know, when you get pottery in a kiln, sometimes they have bits like that to stop it sticking. And, you know.
Possible, interesting. People have come up with suggestions it was a way of maybe somehow they were moving the rocks. Maybe it was what was fashioned, because the rocks aren't exactly just rocks from the hillside somewhere and cut. Maybe they're fashioned in some way. That's also something interesting which I'll touch on. But you can see from these rocks that they're purposely constructed to just fit really nice with each other. For no apparent reason, they could have just done blocks, but no. But there is hidden messages within these stones, and as we can see, the puma, this is the head of the puma, by the way. That little mark in the stone there and here is there purposely. This isn't due to wearing over the thousands of years. These little marks are in there to represent the head of the puma. This one here, you see it's got this little, and it's perfectly round. Not like these other nodules, this one's actually perfectly round. You think, okay, there's a little bit, so what is this mark here in the rock? It is some type of serpent. So they had little messages in the stones, you know, pictograms within them. So apart from building it and then constructing it in the most ridiculous way, which was really hard, let's put pictures and pictograms into these things as well. This wall, what you'd say is, you know, it's roughly going to be the same location, isn't. This is the Imperial Palace, the wall in Japan. Again, same idea, same way of cutting, same method of using these stones. Cut to precision and laid. Here's another one, exactly the same. When we go to Easter Island, people think, oh yeah, that's the places where the heads, the standing stone heads are. And we do realise, when we look at the Easter Island, it's quite a unique place, Easter Island, by the way, very unique. There's no place like it on Earth. It's only relatively small. Most of the stone heads face outwards as opposed to inwards to the island, as if they're gazing out. All the heads would have had eyes at some point, but the material has been is disappeared over thousands of years. And of course, it's a very active, well, was once a very active site volcano. And again, the geomagnetics are off the scale, completely off the scale there, which is understandable considering there's a volcano here. But what people don't realise is that there are actually stone walls there in Easter Island, hence these. And if you look closely, you've got precision cut stone, exactly the same as the Incas were doing, exactly the same. There's no difference. There's no difference between this wall and the wall which predates around about the same age in Japan, and the same wall that predates the same around about the same age in Peru. So we can say, okay, so around about the same time in Japan, in Peru, and on the Easter Island, everybody was kind of doing the same thing. Well, why is that? How? How'd that information travel? Look at that stone. You didn't have to put that stone in there. You know, but hey, how? Let's put a stone. Let's make it look difficult. You know? Evidence of their technology. Look at that one. Why on earth would you put that in there? You're probably going to have to cut this stone in this fashion. Probably could you just put it up. But hey, no, let's have a tiny, lovely piece of stone right in there. This does travel the distance, by the way. It's like putting a rod in the stone. It's about so big, about 2.5 feet, that wall. And that is not just a single piece on the front, it goes all the way through like a rod. Precision cut stone. We realised recently that the dating of these Easter Island heads probably date back thousands of years more than what we initially thought. Because initially they said, oh yeah, well, you know, they were built, they were constructed and they were put up with warning signs to warriors or whatever reason that would be. However, below the soil, you do have this type of patterning on the bodies. Why would they go to such lengths of constructing all this if they were just out of sight, buried forever? They didn't plan to bury these so deep. They were buried in silt. And as you dig down, believed to be roughly 12,000 years old due to the amount of layer of silt there is. So something happened years ago, or some type of catastrophe happened, which buried these in silt. It's the only reasonable explanation. Because these weren't buried that deep on purpose. No one's going to spend years carving these rocks with hands and belts and fashions and stuff, just to be buried, never to be seen. We also know recently that things are just going all haywire at the moment regarding timings and how long us humans have had technological advancement to the point of building things like this. Göbekli Tepe, An amazing site in Turkey, which we used to think, you know, the Sumerians were the first. The Sumerians were the first culture to have these type of buildings and language and art and all sorts of things, even laws and mathematics. But no, you know, these guys even predate the Sumerians. So again, only over the last 2 or 3 years, we've shifted back even further. And we're going back and back and back. And we cannot calculate. This is roughly about 14,000 years ago. Do you remember that first picture I showed you at the beginning? We were just living in caves 10,000 years ago. This is what's been pushed out in schools and universities. We were just living in caves 10,000 years ago. We were just hunter-gatherers, you know, we didn't really do, we might have done a little bit of farming, you know, but that was it. Now, we had large cities. This is just one area of a huge area, which has been excavated. And these things are precisionally lined. Again, here we go, guys. They're precisionally aligned to the stars and Orion and things like that, and just as we see with Egypt and many other places. Hidden knowledge goes back a long, long time, and it's a global knowledge. It's a knowledge that we all had all around the world. Hence the Sumerians, 6,000 years ago, we used to think that was an achievement. Now we have to go back 14,000 years to go back exactly. And this is just one area. It's been excavated, and there are hundreds, the whole area. This is all apparently filled in on purpose, buried. The whole city was buried on purpose, not by accident, but purposely built and then purposely buried for some reason, and been discovered. And the excavations still carry on today. But achievable by Incas, we have to question, are these things achievable by the Incas? We've seen Inca stone buildings where they originally came from, near Lake Titicaca. Doesn't look like these sort of things. Is it achievable? You know, these are the questions that are often being asked. When we look at these type walls and we look behind, because it's not just a matter of looking at the front of these walls, it's also a matter of looking what's in between them and behind them in Peru. Because it's not like, hey, let's do a good job on the front side and just let's do, nobody's going to see the back, so we don't need to do the back. No. They did the back as well. They spent the time and the effort on the back, which is not seen as well, which is quite very interesting. This is we call it a cheating stone, because this stone was replaced by what we believe is just the Inca. The Inca actually replaced this stone. And yes, though it looks great from the front, and you take the top stone off, you say, they cheated. They didn't even make it fit. Because they're not bothered about what you don't see. It's about what you do see, and that's over the front. So they didn't make any effort. So there's another little thing. There's a big difference between whoever built these early constructions of pre-Incas and the Incas. And when we look, can you see this one stone sat on another stone there? And it's hard to see, but it is there. Right there, that stone sits on this stone. And you can't fit. And when you see on these television shows, when you say, oh yeah, you can't fit a paper or a piece of paper, you can't fit a needle in between. You can't. You cannot. They perfectly are fashioned to the point where they purposely rest upon each other with next to microscopic gaps. Microscopic gaps. We can also come across this depiction of Viracocha at Tehuacán. And what's interesting about this is that when you look at representations of the Inca, they didn't have facial hair, they didn't have beards, they didn't have moustaches and goatees and things like that. It just wasn't in their nature. A bit like, I suppose, the Red Indians, you know, the Native Americans. You know, you don't really see many with much facial hair, did we? It wasn't the kind of thing. But there's a lot of questions as to who this guy was. Now the story is that he travelled to the country on some type of vessel that travelled across the sea, I'm assuming some type of ship, and brought them knowledge and information which they brought into their society. Whoever this guy is, they will refer to him as a god. But a god with a goatee, that is, which is very Europeanistic, should we say. It's very much seen throughout Europeans. Very kosher. And as we look there, we're climbing around and looking at like I say, you got to get off the beaten track and you have to really look around places that they're not telling you that you don't get on a tour, because that's where the real real hidden gems are, including these people, you know, the natives of Peru and their little llamas, and you know, they're really nice. They actually eat these guys as well. Can you imagine? And you know the main dish in Peru was? Did you have one, Michael? What do you know what the main dish was?
Well, I've blown around alpaca, but
Alpaca?
Was,
I had a bit of alpaca. It's
Guinea pig, is it?
guinea pig.
Yeah.
Guinea pig. Well, I want to say guinea pig, not sliced guinea pig. Guinea pig, full guinea pig. Guinea pig on a skewer. Yeah. I didn't have one, by the way.
I did.
Again, you can see these walls, and again, built across the top of these. They built houses and stores, and literally built on what was already there. And these walls are incredible. And it's not much different than Sacsayhuaman. The walls are incredible across this fortress. But there is something interesting about these. Recent surveys carried out of took scrapings and samples from these stones are suggesting an anomaly. This anomaly suggests that they're not exactly just cut stone. There's some compound in this stone, which might suggest that these stones have somehow been formed, a bit like using a form of cement, in a sense of speaking. These might not be just cut stones. These could have been fashioned in moulded in a certain way and then placed together. Because there's elements within this, in the scrapings of these stones, that suggest there is some type of cement bonding within these. And it's huge, it's a huge site, absolutely huge. And when you actually look between the stones, it's true, again, as what they say. You look at the curves, the tiny little curves in stones, just to fit them together. You cannot fit a piece of paper in them. They are incredible, considering how old they are. Irrigation systems, running water. And they didn't just do this, sometimes they did it by the miles and the miles. They wanted to make sure that water, they had it wherever they wanted it. They could move water from one place to another by utilising channels. And they did so by these channeling. Well, that's probably one of the largest stones, as you can see. And this was quarried, allegedly. They said it was quarried, this stone, 72 kilometres away, downhill. So we've had to carry this stone uphill. And again, you've got some unusual markings on these stones, as you can see, unusual marks. But these are huge, huge stones. This is Brian Forrester, because this, you know, there's a lot of aspects within these legends. The two main guys for me are David Hatcher-Childress and Brian Forrester, which I credit for a lot of the stuff that I've been talking about, because they've had the opportunity to visit so many locations around the world and found the same things. And I'm absolutely 100% believe them, because from visiting these sites myself, I can say, yeah, and more. There's so much more that could be added to these television shows that they're not telling you. The cuttings of these stones, tools were level 3.5 using these stones. Stone is a level 7, by the way. So the tools to cut these stones are half as strong as the stone itself. Don't make sense. This is all cut from a single piece of rock, by the way, in Peru. A single piece of rock. The steps are perfect. Perfectly leveled. Cutting little wedges out of stone, which is probably about this big. It looks like it's just like a hot knife through butter. How they did it and why they did it is a mystery. This is actually a staircase, but it's broken. It's in two parts. Now the size of this rock, the only thing that could have actually broke this rock, and what's happened is it's broke and it's tippled over, it's upside down. It's like an upside down staircase now. Is a catastrophe of some sort. A catastrophe must have happened, which has caused these huge stones in some cases to actually crack, topple, not just here but all around the world. We look at this location where it looks like somebody's just took a slice out of literally out of the cliffside. Just a slice. You see all these little slices all around. We'll just take this bit out here, guys, today. How they did it is unknown. And they're all over the place. And if you actually start looking around Peru off the beaten track, you'll start seeing where they've been getting all these stones from and cutting them away. They're all over the place. Some of them have actually got tunnels, opened up, purposely built. They are dug out from the bedrock, and they're actually just fashioned rooms. It's just a room, it's been just like gutted, cut out that rock to fashion a room, and steps and all sorts of things. As we see in Egypt, some of the stones are cut so well that it's like touching glass, to the point where you can even see your reflection in them. And they say they use these tools to do that. It can't be done. Interesting. This is a known place known as Pisac in Peru. And in that location, you've got pre-Inca built construction and then Inca built construction. They don't look nothing alike. They're nothing like each other. And yet, history says the same guys built all these together. The same guys built the same things. And it doesn't add up. Again, we're looking at two completely different formats of construction. Just as we see these cut out of a single piece of stone, this shaping. Cut out here, this is what we know as the door goes to nowhere. Maybe they were going to build a room in there at some stage. They cut away and then cut the door, but the door doesn't go anywhere. It steps in about maybe 2 strides and you just hit brick. Well, hit. Just the cliff side, there's nothing in there. It's a better version of that. They cut all this out and they cut this out. And do you know what? They've got little grooves and edges in the door frame. It's amazing work. It doesn't go anywhere. Now, what's interesting about this photograph? There are, again, 3 levels of work. You've got this stuff here at the back, this stuff here, and this. There's like pre-Inca and maybe Inca at the top and sides. There's another person, Jennifer Stein, who lectures on ancient Peru. And she's got a photograph. And when I was in Philadelphia a few months back, she showed me a photograph, the very same photograph. She'd visited this location, but visited this location about 25 years ago. And her photograph, there's a big difference, because I'm looking at her photograph, and she's stood in exactly the same place as me, so it's like looking at an identical photo. She went to this location, took that photo, and so did I. But there's something significantly different on those photographs, because on her photograph, there's a stone pyramid here. And it's actually, she actually said it's part of the build, it was all in there. But that pyramid, which the water fell on top of, is not there no more. It's gone. I don't know where it's gone or why someone would even move this stone pyramid the water fell on. But it's not there. And apparently, I've talked to other researchers, and there were once 2 of them with these stone pyramids, small stone pyramids the water fountains fell on, which have been cut away or hammered away and just been taken. They're not there. Why would anybody have any reason to move these pyramids? It doesn't make any sense. But there's the photo. We've got the photographs to show it. 25 years ago, they were there. Between then and now, someone had some reason to remove them. And they not only that, but the Incas were also very much into the energies of the land, as we know through the site buildings. And when you actually start looking at the geology of how and why they built the way they did, they were following magnetic lines, just as a lot of these things have been constructed in the UK. This is Olia Tambo, and as you can see, you've got these terraces. They once were nicknamed the Giant Steps because they thought they were giant steps. This is in 2001, this is in 2015. It's not changed much, you know. These aren't giant steps, they're terraces. These were utilised for irrigation of the land, to grow plants on, and also for safety. You know, you find exactly the same things in Machu Picchu, where if you fall, the likelihood is you're only going to fall 5 or 6 feet, rather than all the way down to the bottom of the mountain. Up on top of here, you have these stone walls again, exactly the same. These blocks are absolutely huge. Cut out. We don't know what they were used for. They're just up there. But to get them up there was like me saying, you know, it's about 100 cars, like putting the weight of 100 cars together and climbing up Ben Nevis, literally, to get this up there. The feat alone for this single rock, and there are many of these, would have been absolutely tremendous. But what is interesting when you actually look at these blocks, which are precision cut again, is that you've got movement in these stone blocks. Now the only way again you've got these huge movements in these stones, rocks of that size, must have been some type of serious catastrophe. Something must have shut the land so much that it even had the capacity to move these huge stones. It moved these stones accordingly. It separated them to the point where the Inca came along and said, well, we'll fill them up. But who's these guys? Whoever made these were probably the Pre-Incas. But the separation of these stones could have been, again, down to a catastrophe. Huge stone, temple wall. Again, up on the top of these mountains. Where they come from, how they got them there, is an incredible feat. We see the different types of build. You've got this, and then you've got this. It's a big giveaway, as far as I'm concerned, that this is Pre-Inca, and this is Inca. You know, Inca just couldn't do it. Inca just couldn't build the same as these guys. You know, so whoever this mysterious civilization was, seems to be cut out of history. Now this is where it starts getting interesting. Talk about cut stones. How do we cut a stone? Precision cut of a stone. And it's not just, we find this in Peru, we find it all over the world. Precision cuts to the point where we look at perfect 90-degree angles. Perfect 90-degree angles. These are like, these are excavated from the bedrock, and they're like sliced out. And here's an example that really twists your mind, this one. They want to cut this out, okay? Okay, so they're going to cut down here, they're going to cut down here, they're going to cut up here and across the top. How do they cut the back out? You've got 4 cuts. How do you get behind it to cut it out? Well, some guy said, well, maybe they didn't, they just bashed it out. You know, there is no piece of rock. Well, the actual rock from that piece is here, there it is. That was taken from there. So not only did they cut it, but they left it in plain sight at the bottom of this outcrop of rocks, just to show, hey guys, there it is. You know, let's see how you guys can do it. And you know, cutting a piece out like this, getting behind it, and somehow utilising something to cut the back of this rock to get it out like this, we struggle a little bit with what they use, what technology they use. But if you walk around the back of Ollantaytambo, keep away from the tors, go round the back. This is where you start really seeing the gems, because there's an area about the size of this location here, and it's a ledge, and that ledge is purposely machine cut. It's all machine cut, and you can see the crisscross patterns of the machining marks in these rocks. Something cut a rock the length of this room, and it left the machine marks on it. It must have been huge machines. I don't know any other way of how that could work. Machine marks, literally cut out on ledges. It must have been pretty simple to cut these type of rocks. This is one of the nearby mountains, and again, this set construction on it. Even say that some people believe that there's a face here, 500-foot carved face, as we can see. The sheer mountain top of Machu Picchu, Machu Picchu, and we ask the question, where's it all gone? Where's all the stuff? The top of this mountain, where is it all? It isn't all down at the bottom of the mountain, that's for sure. So it was excavated. Some of it was probably utilised to build this city. Where the rest of it is unknown. It's disappeared. It's like the Nazca, you know, the top of Nazca, when you've got the Nazca lines. That the whole mountain top was literally sheared off to build the lines upon. It's huge, as Eric von Däniken said, runway, whatever it be, the top of this mountain is not there, but it's not at the bottom of the mountain either. A sheer mountain top was moved elsewhere for this to happen, just as it did in Peru. And you can see these terraces. But you go back to the early photographs from 1911, they did have huge building blocks here. They did have, the Pre-Incas did have some involvement here. Again, exactly the same from 1913. In fact, when they were excavating here, they actually found elongated skulls again. These wonderful windows, the 3-window temple, which is referred to. They're fantastic. Fantastic how they actually made these things. This here is known as the hitching post. And it's at the top of Machu Picchu. You don't really get up there very often, but if you do get up there, you probably won't get too close to this hitching stone. This isn't a stone that's been placed on top of the Mount Picchu. It is the top of Mount Picchu. It is the very stone top that's left of it. The geomagnetics on this are crazy. Your compass will spin, completely spin. You walk around this thing, your compass is all over the place. Tests were done years ago regarding the hitching post and its magnetics around it. You see these guys which have a compass in their hands, and it's deflecting all over the place. It's twisting and turning as they move around. It's not by chance that they just built this city up there for defensive purposes on the top of the mountain. They purposely picked these places as well for the geological and the geomagnetics in the land. There was somehow this culture was tied into the magnetics of the earth, and it was significant for them to build certain areas, cities, sites, locations on these areas for some reason. We don't know, but they had some reason. Again, this is the same photograph, different types of construction all together, indicating probably more than one type of people that made them. Whole areas cut out from stone. This is at the back of Machu Picchu, which you don't really get to see because you're on the tour, you don't see it. But if you come off the tour and walk around the back, you'll start to see all these things. These are originally built, probably by Pre-Inca, and the rest, which is adobe mud brick, by just Inca. So again, two forms of construction. These, which are situated near Lake Titicaca, they're still standing towers. They're interesting because there's always wind. It's always windy up there, and what you hear is a constant A-pitch sound, high A-pitch sound, and it's the wind which is hitting these, and it generates these, like a high whistling sound. Nobody really knows what they were for. The historians will say it's for holding grain and stuff, but when you actually look inside these things, they weren't for holding grain. We don't really know what they were for, but they were on the shores of Lake Titicaca, and you can see how high this is compared to where the lake is nowadays. The lake was a lot higher then. This, the Gate of the Gods, Aramamuru. People don't even know this exists in Peru. People have never go to it, never see it. What is interesting about it is that, apart from being a tomb location, is that it's got this huge machine-cut marks on it again. The same things we saw earlier, these huge machine-cut marks, whatever they are. The work of art is crazy, isn't it? I mean, it's like, hey, it must be easy to do. Why do that? It's cut into a level 5 stone. Why cut that into that stone, that shape? It's like showing off. It must be easy. Is this the practice ground for the kids, maybe? We don't know. It's sat there. It's just sat there doing nothing. What's it for? It was like maybe we were practicing. Maybe we get the kids to go and do a little bit. Whatever it was, it must have been easy with what they were utilising, what tools were being used. Precision cut, again, just the same in Pumapunku. And even Pumapunku, the rocks we see today, were never in that location. They've been dug up and put out for display because they were all covered in a silt of mud. Maybe through a catastrophe it happened thousands of years ago. And the Pumapunku was at 13,000 feet, so it must have been a significant catastrophe. The age spots, which we know, and again, there's no tool marks on these things. Not a single tool mark. You think someone might mess up somewhere, but not a single tool mark is found on any of these precision blocks. And they're sliding purposely. In Tiwanaku, we've got these huge areas. It's about half the size of this area. And it's just one cut piece of rock with these inlets. And we have no idea what they are, but they're huge. And would have had to have been taken to that location. They're not naturally from there. Same guys were dug up in that location. These same guys. Whoever these are, I guarantee whoever these are, they're stamped out of history. They've lengthened the Inca society to squash out the pre-Inca builds, the pre-Inca civilization, whoever these guys were. And there are plenty of them. There are in the hundreds and hundreds of schools. All that are not just found in Peru, in other places. And there's been actually some recent ones that have been discovered in Egypt. So that's something, I was only talking to somebody a couple of weeks ago about that, so it's worth keeping your eye out about that. And there are also some very odd shapes and size ones as well. Again, the skull shows that it would have been larger housing for brain capacity. As you see on these very, very long elongations. We just look at these and it's not simply, there's no evidence of the boarding or the bombing happened on a skull. It is that the skull is shaped in a unique fashion. It doesn't have the frontella, the ridges and the cracks that we'd normally have in a human skull from birth. It has this bulge, but it doesn't have these unusual things that we see in a normal human skull. And as we know, we can get elongated skulls like this guy here, but the brain capacity is no different than it would normally be. But in these skulls that we find, there is a big significance. This is just the ridge, as we see. This is this bulge, as we see. But there's nothing. There's no cracks, frontella, nothing. There's nothing to represent that looks like a human skull, apart from just main features. But it's not the only time it was referenced. These elongated skulls are mentioned years back. Egyptian Mera was also said to have an elongated head, as we see. And you actually look at the measurements on these statues. These are original Egyptian statues. You look at the measurements. They match up to the measurements of the skulls in the Inca Museum. They don't measure up to skulls from boarded individuals that have had the skulls reshaped. They measure up to the guys in the Inca Museum. Sumerians also represented elongated heads. This is interesting. This is a stone in Pumapunko. And it's not the design I was interested in. It's all these. It's like this has been a testbed for drilling on. Has anybody knows which are pretty lousy DIY guys like me? Because if you cut a piece of wood and put it on, and I go through the wood and go, oh God, I've gone through something underneath. Happens to us all, doesn't it, sometimes? It's just like someone's used this. It's like a bed place to just do work on. And there's just random drill hole marks all over it. This is the top of a mountain, Bolivia. The whole mountain is cut out and excavated. These things you don't see on television. You don't talk about these things. Whole mountain top is just cut away. It's like cutting paper. It's just crazy. It's crazy. Again, we find precision, not just one precision hole, a boring, a precision cut hole, and another precision cut hole. And they must have been using equipment. There's machinery involved. Again, we talk about maybe some type of catastrophe that happened. It was strong enough to cut this or crack this rock in half. What's interesting about this particular one, again, not known, doesn't get talked about or shown on television. This is we're referring to the mysterious stone pillars here in Ancash. It's thought to be a temple, but those two pillars, there's two large pillar stones here. And several scientists have took samples because they cannot identify the stone. They cannot work out exactly what type of stone that is. It's very similar to some other types of stone. Maybe they were thinking it was cut from a meteorite, a very large meteorite that was once found on planet Earth. Nobody really knows. But they haven't been able to completely identify the two pillar stones that are standing on the face of this once was a temple. When it talks about irrigation systems went on for miles, 20, 30, 40 miles. The Peruvians had a unique way of gathering water and taking water for miles away. And they cut out these channels. They cut them out in certain ways so that, if debris was to fall in there, it's a filtration process. Not only are you getting water, clean water, but you're having the filtration process as well. So they made sure that it had these areas where, if anything falls in there, it'll just act as a filtration process. It won't get caught in the system. And these go on for miles and miles. Cutting rock, these beautiful art cuts. Talking to stonemasons, they say, you know, it has to be machine cut. It has to be machine cut. It cannot cut stone by hand in this fashion. The smoothness, the size of it. We find the same things in these big stone balls. We initially thought that they were found in Costa Rica and didn't really derive from anywhere else, but that's not exactly true. And again, some of them, they range in slightly different sizes, but some of them are huge. And they've literally built the cities around them. And we don't know where they're from, and we don't know what they're for. And like I say, they're just built around them. This is some guy's back garden. And as his house was built, he kind of, oh well, this is my stone wall now. And they're all over the place. What they're not used are probably traps like this that you'd seen in a Steven Spielberg film, nothing of the sort. But when they were stripping away the land, the jungle, these things were found, buried in jungles throughout Costa Rica. It would seem that something, if these were gathered in the same location, if there had been a catastrophe, if it had been maybe a huge tidal wave, for an example, it was as if that these stone balls would have just got carried for miles and filtered all over the different place. Some of them maybe even buried. As they were cutting through the jungle to make roads and towns, they kept coming across these things, dragging them out. And they all are precisionally cut, because when you measure these things, they are perfectly spherical. Perfectly spherical. What is interesting is you look at these particular pieces of paperwork, the trolleys to the surf. This is about the story of the Los Angeles Pacific Railway, when they actually were building it. And it's really interesting because they had all these old machinery cutting away at hillsides. And as they cut through them to build this railway, they were pulling out stone balls. Oh, loads and loads of these stone balls. And interestingly, at this time, it featured in the newspaper that the discovery of dinosaur eggs had been located, fossilised dinosaur eggs. And they weren't, but that's what hit the newspapers at the time, because they couldn't explain as to what they were. But they were also found in Russia, because people thought, oh God, you know, the stone balls of Costa Rica. Oh, what about the stone balls of Russia? You know, they existed, well, perfectly spherical. There they are. And they are quite big, as you can see in size. Bosnia. They're there in Bosnia. Exactly the same thing. They're really mysterious, aren't they? Yeah. It's like we've been invaded by stone balls. Here they are, one being dug out. Siberia. There are some other ones which are knocking around, and they get smaller in size, and maybe the smaller ones in size aren't anything significant. We've got New Zealand, Italy. And as you get to the smaller ones, maybe you have to consider, maybe they were being utilised as weapons, put into sort of slings and things like that, like Croatia had. I believe these are probably used as weapons. These large ones, even this one in China, these stone balls are very, very significant all around the world. Malta. You can see groove marks on them. Now, this one is probably the most interesting of all the stone balls on the planet. The reason why is that there was only one stone ball like this, and this is on Easter Island. Only one. Where's it found? It's found dead in the centre of Easter Island, right at its centre, precisionally placed, within a circle of these other just random stones. There's a perfectly cut sphere, just there, dead, right in the centre, for no apparent reason. And it's the only one of them on Easter Island as well. Nobody talks about that about Easter Island. They talk about the heads, they talk about the wall, but they don't talk about the stone ball, the only stone ball on Easter Island, only in the centre of the middle of the island as well. And why it's there, precisionally cut. The same things we see in Costa Rica and all around the world. The island of Ponape is basically made from basalt. Again, it's a strong stone. This city was completely made. It's filled up with water now, unfortunately, but the whole city is made from basalt. undertaking of this magnitude is huge. To the point where it's actually underwater as well. You can see the basalt underwater. A huge city. Now, not too far away, this is where it was mined from. And as you travel there, you come across this. And I don't know why it's called this, but this is called Ship Mountain. And that's its proper name, unfortunately. But there were two, according to legends, myths, folklore, the tales. There were two of them. They were known as the Ship Mountains. That's what they referred to. And there were two, sister mountains. One mountain stood next to the next mountain, and it was completely taken down. Bang, 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 step by step, until there's nothing left of one of the mountains. And it was that mountain that was utilised and built and constructed to make Pohnpei. The feats that are involved all around the planet are absolutely incredible. There has been a number of books that have been out which talks about what could have happened that created these problematics, why the heads of Easter Island are buried under the ground so much, with at least sometimes up to 20, 30 feet of silt. That must have been carried in, that must have been maybe a tidal wave that come in and just literally spread across the land, dragging mud and dirt and all sorts of things from across the land over these heads and just buried them. They must have been really tall and buried them, because there's no way they would have all those carvings and things on if they were just meant to be buried. Catastrophes from the solar system. Yeah, that could have been one idea that caused a catastrophe. It tends to be around about this time, you're looking, around about 11,500 years ago, something significantly happened on our planet. It caused such a catastrophe that it affected all the planet. And areas were washed away or filtered with loads of stuff put over the top of them and buried, silt, all sorts of things. And only now we're discovering and thinking, okay, if you're at 13,500 feet and this is sat here and it's been covered in 20 feet of silt, what type of catastrophe happens for that to take place? When oceans suddenly rise by 350 feet, what is that? There's evidence that the oceans have risen to 350 feet. What causes the oceans to rise so fast? Probably the melting of the ice caps. What happened? What caused the ice caps to melt so fast? It might have been a collision. It might have been a meteor. Something that caused the ice caps to melt so fast and so quick that when people talked about cities that fell to the ocean, it wasn't that they probably were sinking. But if you're on that city, if you're in Atlantis or wherever that be, and you suddenly say, okay, we're sinking into the ocean, well, that's your perception. Not that the oceans are rising. The oceans could have risen as fast as within a few days to completely bury a whole city. And we do have a number of cities around the world. I don't know if this Atlantis ever really existed. We fall on the writings of Plato, really, is the main evidence. However, if it ever did, it's just one. It's just one of many cities that have been covered by thousands and thousands of miles of extra water that's appeared over the centuries. Catastrophes like this. Or Earth on Fire, was it something that happened with our sun? A huge and massive solar ejection that caused a catastrophe around about that time that left these bits of evidence around the planet. We've all seen mild catastrophes. These are, believe it or not, these are mild catastrophes compared to historical catastrophes. These are nothing. And yet they are shocking to see. Robert M. Schoch talks about in his book about solar outbursts from the sun. And yes, the sun does go through certain cycles. And we do see evidence of even that nowadays. That we have solar spots, sun cycles that happen. And it could be a normal thing. And if you go back to the 1800s, late 1800s, the only communication we had then was telegram. And we did have a mass ejection, solar burst from the sun back then. And believe it or not, it cut out, it interfered with telegrams. Well, that's all we really had then. What would happen if we had the same solar outburst today? Well, it won't be a pretty sight, guys, because aircraft would probably fall out of the skies. For a start, because everything's working on electronics, you know. We won't be able to go and fill up our cars because everything's done with electronics. Oh, by the way, you can't buy no food and shopping because everything's done through electronics, even your electronic tills. You know, so basically, it'd be an absolute nightmare. If we were to have a catastrophe like that today, that would be probably the most significant catastrophe to affect humanity. It could push us back hundreds of years into the dark ages again because of the technology that we use and these solar outbursts that leave these huge magnetic bursts around for such a long time. Our electronics aren't going to work. We're going to have to change the way we work, change the way we live. Maybe it was something like that, what Dr. Robert Schock was talking about. Also talks about erosion around the Sphinx. We know that water erosion happened around the Sphinx. Again, it puts it at a date which rather going further back in time, when that type of weather was around that time. There's been lots of talk about this over the years, and it would seem that there is plenty of evidence to support that the Egyptians did one of two things. They rather adopted somebody else's idea about pointing and aligning to the skies, or the Egyptian race itself are older than what is written in the history books. It's as simple as that. It's one of the two. They've either adopted somebody else's technology, or theirs is longer than what is expected. A lot of these Sphinx stones around what we use for the Sphinx temple, these are very large stones. And we come to the Great Pyramid of Egypt. I didn't say to you, I wasn't going to get in there. You don't need to. There's so many mysteries inside the pyramids as alone. We don't need to talk about them. But scattered around outside, absolutely. Cut stones. Cut precision stones. Saw marks. Now, I calculated the length of this saw. Some of the saws, the biggest saws used to cut some of these rocks were 8 meters in circumference. Now, what is 8 meters? You know, it's probably not, you know, it's a hell of a size, 8 meters. The circumference cut, the largest ever found, is 8 meter saw. Where's an 8 meter saw? It's quite easy to find an 8 meter saw knocking around, wouldn't you? It's easy because we can dig up little things like this. Oh yes, we found a little tooth, or we found a little bone. Where would you hide an 8 meter saw? Unless it's just one item. Where's the stuff that's cutting these rocks? Oh, by the way, this is a modern drill hole cutting concrete, and this one is in cutting granite on the pyramid site. You can't see the difference, is there? They're absolutely identical. Except this is a precision cut of modern tools through concrete. And concrete's nowhere near as strong as granite is, of course. And yet, they were doing the same thing. There was core marks in modern tools. There is core marks in these ancient tools. There has to be equipment around. And just to add insult to injury, the core they took out, there it is. Now, this is something else because it isn't a big drill bit which is blasting out a circular thing. It's actually like a cup. It's like a cylinder. It's moving around so fast. It actually cuts out the core because the cores were left on the floor. This is rose quartz granite, by the way. This is a level 8, 8.5. It's one of the hardest stones on the planet. They cut out the cores. They left the cores on the floor, and you can see. Look at the resolution here. Look at that. There's been turning, the turning process. You can count each revolution how much it was cutting through rose granite quartz. Whatever they were using, they had technology then that we can't cut now. Look at the microscopic core marks. This one, each turn was cutting through, slice, slice, slice. It must have had machines. Cutting rock, you know, let's just test it. Let's do a test. Let's just put some cuts, some grooves. There are cut rocks all over the world. Baalbek is said to be one of the largest rock in the world, largest man-made rock. Cut, should we say. And it is huge. And you can see the scaling here of these stones that were placed and cut. One in the bedrock. And they're plentiful. And they're huge. Oh, do you see the machine marks? There they are again. Huge machine marks all over this rock. In fact, they go all the way down. They are machine cut. There's machines. It isn't so much the mystery about all these ancient sites. It's about where are all tools, where's all the machinery. when we look at Aswan, this is a feat to cut this out, because people used to say, well, you know, how would they have cut it out from underneath bedrock? You can cut this out. Remember we talked earlier about how they would have cut it out the side? They would have just left it there. How would they have cut it out? Okay, they can channel it out, but how did they get it up and out of the ground? It's still connected to the ground, after all. It was down to the Chinese only a couple of years ago that we kind of realised maybe which way the Egyptians were going, because that is relatively new information. By looking at this particular rock, we know that they channeled out all around this, and was probably going to be an obelisk. And then one day, you know, they found a fracture in it. And they went, oh, well, guys, tools down, tools down. I know we've been working on this rock for the last 32 years, but unfortunately we have to leave it today, because there's a fraction of a crack in it. Don't make sense, does it? But there are these unusual marks actually on this. Look at these scoop marks. It's like taking a bit of ice cream out. Scoop marks, machine marks, on the actual rock. Look at all this. This is just like somebody's just taking slices out, bit by bit. And when you get down there, this is the trench that goes all the way around this. This would have had to be dug out from the bedrock. It would have had to, from the underneath. I wouldn't really like to bring the guy underneath there. And we know that because the Chinese did it. The Chinese did it around at the same time the Egyptians were doing it. And this is the same thing, except they dug out. And it was on pillars. And at some point, some guy goes in there and knocks the last pillar out. Now, I wouldn't want to be that guy. But look at the sheer size of it. It shows that the Chinese were doing the same thing. And cutting out these pillars underneath that supported the big rock. And there's some fantastic, this is stone, this is rose quartz stone, and it's tremendously hard. And look how this has been fashioned out of a single piece. It's been cracked, unfortunately, but it's fashioned out of a single piece. But in a place called Yanshan Quarry, which is a relatively new discovery, there's been some recent tests in certain areas and rocks there, and there's one there that does look like it's evidence of being hand-cut. And if this is hand-cut rock, as we've seen in many other rocks around the world, it would make the Balbit stone look very small in comparison. These ones are metric tons. This one's 16,250 metric tons. Again, you see these funny nodules. Remember us going back to Peru and saw those funny nodules on their stones? Similar sort of thing. Cut out. Notice the pillars have been cut, so the whole idea was to take that rock out completely. Machine marks. The same machine marks that we see in Peru and in Egypt, in China. You know? It's machine marks. Huge things. These are trees, it's huge. This is the one that they claim that is evidence of actually cut rock that's been fashioned by human hands somehow. If this be true, then how on earth would ever that be lifted? It just wouldn't, would it? You know, you just can't imagine. But then, can we even imagine 1,000-ton rock being lifted? You know? And yet somebody had ideas to do so. We see these things underwater as well. They're not just on land, but underwater. Exactly the same things. Now, this one makes me laugh, because the information about this particular underwater, it's off the shores of Japan, of an island. According to official documentation, this is precisionally cut stone, which is a natural formation, that the sea has cut it out. The movements of the water have somehow cut out this precision, huge rocks, which is interesting because there's nothing there. If they have been cut, where's the debris? There is no debris. This is what the geologists and the archaeologists say. Officially, this is a natural location, and naturally made by the ocean currents. Rubbish, absolute rubbish. This is the Olmec in Mexico, which is interesting because they do look African, which would suggest that, okay, they knew the Africans, or the Africans were kind of, they'd been there or something. There was some cross-pollination going on here. And if that is the case, then traversing transatlantic was probably taking place. And we know it was taking place because in the mummies in Egypt, they had cocaine in the systems. And it's only derivative from South America. If that's the case, then trading must have been taking place and crossing vast oceans must have been happening. So it's not fantastic to think that, okay, the Mexicans knew about the Africans and vice versa. Yeah, these pyramids, not your average ones, these are the older pyramids, should we say. Not unlike the Great Pyramid, they are significantly different. As we can see, the Giza power plant as suggested. The Grand Gallery. There's only one pyramid on the Giza plateau that has 8 sides, and that's the Great Giza, the Great Pyramid. And that has 8 sides, not 4. Not many people know that, but you can actually see from satellite views, it is fractionally comes in each side, making 8-sided pyramids. And it's only the one, it's the only one like that. And of course we know about them cutting through this hole, which was one of the shafts that apparently went up to line up with the stars. And they found some evidence to suggest that these weren't, as we initially thought, the block was pushed in to hold itself there from being lifted out again. Some people suggested there was some form of electrodes and that natural energies, liquids, were put in there to cause some type of generation of power. These are new possible theories, just as they did with the Baghdad battery. You know, they used citric acid, you know, to generate an electricity in this battery form by putting copper cells in it. The obelisks are everywhere. You know, it's not just in Egypt that you find these things. Ethiopia also has them. And the world's largest one crashed a few years ago and came down on top of a shed, actually. It was the world's largest obelisk, as you can see. Unfortunately, it just toppled. Because you can't really move these things. You don't know what's going to happen. Land shifts all the time, remember. Right next door to this place is the Church of Our Lady and the Mary of Zion. And this is where you have these guys walking around and claim that they guard the Ark of the Covenant. They believe they have the Ark of the Covenant in there. I don't think they have, but these guys do. Hence the pictures and the sculptures that they have. But cutting rock must have been simple. Cutting rock with machinery they must have had. Single cut rocks, churches, this is all cut out of bedrock. A single cut piece of rock. All cut out. This is in India. This one cut out of bedrock. Just cut out easy. Made into buildings. This is the top of it, by the way. That's the bottom. This is all one piece of stone. We must have cut out, and this then piece of stone was cut out to make rooms and doorways, and it's all granite stone, by the way. When you talk to the ancients, you talk to these guys about the ancients, why did this happen? Where did it come from? They said it was built for the gods that came from the skies. It was built for them. Not built by them, it was built for them. And again, the rock cutting techniques are tremendous. How did he do that? It takes machinery to do it. And it takes machinery to do this, cut out all bedrock. And this. And they're all over the world, these things. We can understand there are some great works that can be done by human hands. But giant rocks with machine marks on them is the big giveaway. They're all over the place. Precision cut stones. And again, in here, in the hills, we have this chamber. And when this is cut out, it's cut out with such precision that it's like glass. Now to do that, not only do you have to cut the rock, but you have to heat it to get it that smooth. But you cannot heat that rock to the temperature using the normal ways we can generate heat. Not a bonfire of any sort could generate that amount of heat to heat the walls, to sand them, to smooth them, to mirror them. And in these locations, there are exactly that. As you can see, the walls are just like mirrors. It's granite. It's a level 8 rock, by the way. It's granite. And it's precisionally cut, and it's precisionally smooth, to the point where it's just like a mirror. it's incredible work. And they're all over the place. Evidence, this is throughout even China and India. These things are worldwide, by the way. Just scalloped out. This one's in China. Just cut up like a piece of bread. Zigzags. It's not a single cut, that. That's purposely cut with zigzags in. I mean, why did they do things which are so crazy difficult? We've got some anomalies in the UK. You know, we've got the three Wells towers. If anybody's seen them, you know, you have to kind of look around. If you start looking around the landscape, you start to see the unusual ones. And they are still there today. There's an unstored church in Yorkshire, UK. It's got one actually. They actually built the whole graveyard around it. It's still there. There's old pictures of it. Put a capping stone on the top of it now to protect it. There it is. It is an obelisk of some sort. So the theory and ideas even travelled to the UK. Underneath the pyramid is just as interesting as it is above. On the Giza Plateau, the first construction of the Giza pyramids happened at least a mile and a half down by the shafts. The shafts were built first, which go down to waterways. There was even tombs down there with, you know, with the waterways, which the Egyptian authorities said, oh, by the way, they were empty. They always say they're always empty. And of course, that construction happened a mile and a half underground the Giza Plateau, and then had to come up. And then the first thing that they built was the underneath of the pyramid, and then higher up. So the first part of construction was literally nearly a mile down underneath the Giza pyramids, where all these shafts travelled down, and they are huge shafts. And there are plentiful all over the place. We don't actually know what all consists of. All we know that there's been 3 levels found so far, and we know of 2 of them. And they go down for miles all over the place. And you can see here, this is Bright Forest, the Giza Plateau, level 1 of 3. But we do talk about Cyrus, and apparently he did have an elongated head under this. It's not just by chance that he had a hat that shape. Apparently he had an elongated head. It's interesting that he actually looked apparently a different colour as well. He was always represented. Maybe he did that on purpose, just to say, hey guys, this is to represent a god or godly figure. Well, I need to identify him, so we'll paint a different colour. Maybe. We do not know. But we always come back to the elongation of the heads in the schools, and they are all over this world. It would seem there's a civilization. If this civilization is responsible for bringing this idea of how we built these things, using these types of machinery, or whatever it be, it would seem that this society of elongated skulls don't exist in history. They've been squashed out, pressed out of history. They don't exist, but we do find the evidence for them. But historically, they never happened. The Bed Pyramid in Dasha, in Egypt, generates frequencies, because it's about acoustics as well, because the Peruvians, very much into the acoustics of buildings as well, about what sounds are generated, just as the sounds are generated in the Egyptian pyramids, certain frequencies. They are in all other locations as well, so they're very in tune with not only the geomagnetics and electromagnetics of Earth's energy, but also the acoustics as well. So everything came into importance. It's like a new society suddenly come along with all these new ideas and planted this idea worldwide. These are generated in fashion and built in this manner to generate resonance. This is a resonance chamber, by the way. It's the same thing as the Grand Gallery. It's like a resonance chamber. And of course, they built the Egyptian pyramids. These are the tools that did it. These are the tools that built them. And cut these wonderful stones and these wonderful holes. As we can see, this is rose quartz granite stone. Perfectly cut. Oh, this is saw marked. Testing of a saw. These things are just scattered around. But when you go to Egypt, people are all looking, oh, the pyramids. And what they're tripping over, their evidence, is just sat on the floor in front of them on the Giza Plateau. 2 to 3 millimetre per rotation on this particular. This is rose quartz granite again. Cut out, you can see the groove marks. How did they do that one? It was from Russia. Well, this couldn't have turned, could it? Because we can't core out something of that nature, but it is cored out. And we don't know how. And these are recent findings coming out from Russia and Bosnia and all sorts of places like that, where there is more evidence of these strange cuts. They must have melted, they must have had something that cut through rock with precision, not just maybe rotation tools, but something else as well, especially to get this fashion. These, we don't know what these are. These are scattered around outside on the Giza Plateau. Abu. And of course, the archaeologists said the sinks. They're not sinks. These aren't sinks. Scoop marks, machine marks, in a lot of these things that I found. If you look closely for them, you'll find them. This is rose quartz granite, one of the hardest stones in the world. Somebody took a chunk, a huge rock, and had this all fashioned from one piece of stone. These aren't pieces put together. This is all from one cut piece of stone. And to do this, it takes machinery to do so. And how do we know? This isn't just by fact we say these things. We look at purpose holes in all sorts of different types of stone. It doesn't matter what type of stone, they had the capability to cut it. Here's probably the largest one that's ever been discovered. Machine cut. 1,004-year-old advanced ancient drilling technology. These, whatever was in these must have been significant. It must have been something in these that was so fantastic, because these sarcophagi, they look like sarcophagi, are absolutely huge. Look at the size of these things. This is the engravings on the side of it. But when you look inside, look at the precision. Perfect. But it's not just perfect on one wall, it's perfect on every wall. So no matter where you are in there, you've got perfect alignment. And not only that, it's polished as well. So it's heated up and polished to a point where we don't know how it could be done. And the same applies for this. This is diorite stone, measured at 8, measured at level 8. And really very, very strong stone. Whole piece of stone was cut to engrave this and capture this image of a pharaoh. And what's interesting is to do these, we'd have to have machinery, specialised machinery, because there has been people, specialists that have visited these locations and looked upon, microscopically looked upon the dressings, the heads, the arms, the ears. And what they said was one side of this, when calculating and professionally scanned by computers, was identical to the other side. Now you know as well as I do, if this is a true representation of a pharaoh, nobody has one side of the face exactly as the same as the other. It's impossibility, it doesn't happen in life. Though you might seem like, but they're not identical. And yet this is. It's like one side of the face has been cut exactly to the same as the right side. It takes machinery to do so. This type of machinery to do so. This is how we would do it today. To get that amount of computer precision on one side, left side of the face to the right side of the face, we have to use computer laser technology cutting systems like this. And they use get a slab of the stone, and it just cuts out perfectly. Either side is identical. It's the only way, because no one else could have actually really done that just by hand. We know from the calculations, the computer scans, the information that's come back, it's absolutely perfect, left and right. So it has to be machined. And the thing is that throughout this talk, it's all been about not these ancient sites that I've travelled and looked at. Yes, they do exist. Yes, there are anomalies about them. Okay, I'm past that, but I'm interested. Where's the evidence? What has been used? Where's the machinery? What devices were used to cut the stone, to move the stone? Like I say, there are machine marks all over the place if we look for them. But they're not showing you those things. They just want to go on about, oh, did ancient aliens come down from the skies? Well, not necessarily. What I'm suggesting is that maybe we had some form of technology that is lost. That's technology's hidden. That's what's gone. And this is the evidence that leaves behind. All because of these guys. This is what made all the wonders of the world. You can find them in any back garden, any tool shed maybe. And if you did, and do want to believe that they made all these ancient sites just by using these things, guys, then we really have got a problem. And this is what's fed to us mainstream. And this is what's fed to the kids, and this is what's fed to schools and universities and history books. And that is, I can only assume, is a lie. The big lie is to who are the people with the elongated heads? Who were the people that built prior to the Incas, the pre-Incas? Who were they? And who were they that they travelled around the earth and gave the same information worldwide to every civilization on this planet to start building the same type of locations, start building the same type of buildings, do the pyramids, do the obelisks, cut the stone in this fashion, move the stone in this fashion, a hidden technology, a hidden tools and machinery. One thing is for sure, going to Peru, absolutely, but stay off the beaten track. Don't go on the tours, go around yourself and look for the mysteries, because they're there plentifully. The same for Egypt. Instead of honouring the Egyptian pyramids, look what's at your feet, because there's things around where it shows where there are saw marks and drill marks and all sorts of things, and they're just there in plain sight, and nobody's really looking at them. For me, it absolutely. I went out there to say, okay, is Ancient Aliens and all these TV shows really real? Are they telling you the truth? Yes, they are. But what they're not telling you is the more significant things about machine cuts, about the evidence of where those are and how they must have done that. And the recent findings in China, maybe that's to come, that's relatively new information. And machine marks again, huge machine marks, so they must have been big, these things, wherever they were. The evidence is out there. If you look around for it, you'll find it. It isn't these guys. It isn't these type of tools that's manufactured these things. Absolute certainty. So I hope it's shed a bit of a light on the mysteries around the planet. It has for me, because it's kind of unfolded. It's kind of, for me, it's like, well, I went out there thinking a few things might be a bit dodgy. And I come back thinking, wow, there's yet more to learn, about things that they aren't telling us. So, places to visit. If you do get a chance to go to Peru, Cusco main location is visit the ancient sites, take a compass with you, take something that measures an electromagnetic meter or geomagnetic meter, and you'll find the same answers that most other people have. So that they tapped into some type of electromagnetic source where they were going to build these buildings. And the same principles lies in many of the Druid sites in the UK as well. Thank you very much.